Hello friends, welcome back. This is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com. Today's video is going to be a demonstration of how I go about interpreting a set or group of 9 cards. Now, my demonstrations so far have been simple, with 3 card spreads, which are fine if you're doing, 15 or 20 minute readings, at an event, that you've been paid to do, or, just if you need like quick clarity on something. But sometimes, you need more cards because, a situation, requires more insight, right? And 9 cards gives a fair amount of insight, in my opinion. I don't tend to go beyond, 12 card readings. I think my longest one that I do is about 16. And that's a personal preference. Some people, will use a whole deck, to do a reading. But I tend to keep it at, I cap it out at maybe a dozen cards for maximum. Because I think it starts getting, a bit mumbo jumbo and, it brings less clarity than more, right? So that's my personal reason. Anyway, for today's reading, a demonstration, I've decided to use the Tarocco Neoclassico. This particular deck was created in 1810 under the direction of the Gutenberg card factory. And I have the Lo Scarabeo by its side. It's another publication of this particular deck. And the reasons for why I have the second deck on hand will be made obvious, in the course of the video. The reason I've chosen this, I tend to pick decks that, for demonstration, that are easily obtained. You don't have to spend, $80 on a deck to be able to get clear and concise readings, But this deck is petite, it's small in size, and I feel it will help me demonstrate my intent. Now, full disclosure, prior to beginning this video, I concentrated, mixed, and handled the cards with the intent that I had in mind, because it can take a very long time for me to do that, and I don't want to use up video time doing that and, making you wait and sit through it. However, it was understood before I finished that I would give the deck about 7 more shuffles, to again engage in the question. Now, the question that I've chosen is intended for demonstration. However, it is a common theme I get. I think this is 6 and 7. Is a common theme that I get, particularly from women. And the question I decided to use as the demonstration was: a woman, older woman, has always been close to her daughter, but something has happened in the past year. She doesn't know what it was, but there's definitely been a shift, a change in her daughter's attitude toward her. And it's been painful for the mother because she doesn't understand what it was that happened, if anything happened. So she comes for insight. Now, when I concentrated and mixed and handled the cards prior to beginning the video, I made it understood that, one, this was for demonstration purposes only, because intent is extremely important, but and that I asked for clarity and being given the insight and being able to share the information in the way most meaningful to help anyone using this video for demonstration. And 2, a second request I made was that if it could help in any way any mother-daughter duo who is struggling with this theme, that it would help them as well. Okay. So the way I lay the cards for this, I just want to make sure I only have one, is to, lay them 3 at a time in 3 rows. And I'll have to adjust, you know, if we're running out of space here, which we are. And this is why I chose a smaller deck. Okay, give me a second. I'll come back. I apologize for the jarring shift, but the cards were all wonky and stuff, so I wanted to kind of get it set up without fussing with it too much on video. And I also took the opportunity to do a few other things. You'll notice that I have a collection of stones over here. Actually, what they are markers. You know, are markers indicating or referencing the suits, you know, and I use them in class for my students when I teach them, you know, to read from pip style cards. And so I'm going to use them as part of this demonstration. Now, the reason I use them to help illustrate, I think I'm a visual person. I'm a visual learner, you know, which is probably why I love tarot cards so much. And the markers, you know, were helpful to me when I was teaching myself. I had no teacher in those days. I pretty much taught myself through reading and references, etc. At any rate, I never, you know, never wanted to read using reversals, you know, and with pip style cards. And, you know, it's just not a thing to read with reversals. But both you know, all cards have, you know, multiple meanings. You know, there is I don't know if you want to call it a dark side, but there is a more complicated side to any of the cards, you know. Now, this just happens to be a trump card, and I don't count them or treat them as part of the regular pack. You know, I don't give them an assigned, you know, water, earth, air, or fire designation like I would for the pips. Some people do. Some people will assign the trump cards with specific elemental, I guess you want to call it, dignities, but I don't do that because they're the fifth suit. They're the suit unto themselves. They're spirit. So they're not a physical manifestation of earth. They're spirit, so I don't count them. But you have to decide what works for you and then do it. But for example, you know, the coins, for example, I designate as fire, as earth, right? Because they're, you know, they're material things. That makes sense to me. Cups I associate with water. Obviously, cups contain liquid. That's part of it. You know, if you want to go back to the Visconti tarot decks, you know, the Visconti Sforza tarot deck, where we see the appearance of a fountain representing the Ace of Cups, and the reasons for that are in that video if you want to go check it out. It's in 2 playlists, including this one, the Visconti Sforza. With the fountain is a symbol of water, so that makes sense to me, so I designate it as water. The king of coin, right, is another earth. So we're going to put another earth there. Temperance is a trump, so I don't assign it anything. And I believe this is the queen of coin. Okay, so she gets, I'm not mistaken, yeah. Okay, so she gets an earth card or an earth marker. And the top row, we have the moon, which I don't designate. I have the star, which I don't designate. And then we have the King of Cups. So as a cup, he is designated water. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's hard to keep these cards nice and neat. Okay, so why do I do these? Well, as I mentioned before, every card has a complicated side as well as a sunny side, right? And if you're not reading using reversals, which I don't, sometimes it's helpful to understand whether it's the dark side or the sunny side, of an interpretation that is needed. It's helpful to look at the cards that are surrounding it, or what's at play overall with the cards. And if you'll notice here, the only markers that are displayed on the table are earth and water. There's more earth than water, but there is, a combination of those two things. Now, earth and water are congenial elements. They're agreeable to one another. One reinforces the other. And so overall, I would say that I'm going to interpret the cards of this spread with their sunny meanings. Now, there may be some indications with whatever card falls on either side of it or above it or below it that might persuade me to look at it a little bit differently. But generally speaking, because the elements of water and earth are agreeable to one another and they work in, to support one another, my overall impression is that there's not a whole lot of negativity, negative aspects to be read in these cards. Okay, now we have 9 cards. Where do we start? Sometimes my general way to read is I generally will just begin to read and I'll understand how to interpret it, like I'll understand intuitively, or as I read the cards, what combination of cards are suggesting what aspect of a question. Now, the mother, say she came with the question of what, if anything, was the catalyst? What changed the dynamic between my daughter and I? And what can I do about it? What can I do to improve the situation? And so sometimes when I just read the cards, I'll know exactly how to answer those questions without having designated positions. But for the purpose of a demonstration, for someone, if you're just learning, or, you certainly have never seen how I did a 9-card spread before, so it's instructive in this way. What I decided to do was to give meaning to the rows. So for the bottom row, I figured, well, what, if anything, was the catalyst to this change in their relationship? So I designated the first row to shed insight on what it might have been, what might have happened. The second row, the middle row, I designated as what the mother needs to know, about her daughter's perspective. What's the daughter's feeling toward the mother? And it's on a need-to-know basis, because we don't want to spy on anyone, right? I'm not doing a reading to spy on the daughter. I'm doing a reading to help the mother facilitate a better dynamic with her and her daughter, right? But, we don't want to pry into the daughter's life either. So we're just asking, what does the mom need to know about what the daughter's going through? Maybe the daughter's going through something and the mother only needs to know it on a as-needed basis. And then the top row I've designated as what can the mother do to help facilitate, an improved dynamic between herself and her daughter. Now, another thing I do, which I don't know if anybody else does it or not. I don't even remember where I came up with it, but I put a lot of emphasis in my learning on numbers and the power of number, because after all, pip cards are suit and number, right? This is all we see with, cards such as this. So I designated power. I gave power to the number 3, for example, or the number 8 or 7 or whatever. You can see how I did that in my playlist on numerology, but that's another thing. At any rate, I often, most of the time, always, will come up with a quintessential message for a card reading, or the rows of the cards, the rows of each row in a spread. So when we add up and reduce 18 and 17, I don't tally up court cards. We get justice. It tallies up and reduces to 8. So I'm going to, now that we've established that what the elements are, I'm just going to remove them, make it less cluttered. When I tallied up the center row, 14, which is strictly the only numbered card in that row. So Temperance would again be a strong feature of this particular row. Now, the reason I had the Lo Scarabeo copy of this deck was because there is always a chance that a quintessential card or quintessential message might be a card that's already in play. So I use the visual of I just took advantage of having that particular deck in another copy. Sometimes if I don't have more than one copy of a particular deck, I'll just pick another deck's card, and it'll look like I'm goofy using 2 different decks. But sometimes I just use it mostly because I'm doing obviously I'm doing videos, or I'm doing, readings for clients, and I send them a photograph. And, I might remember that Temperance is the quintessential message of this row, but they might not remember. And so it's helpful to have the card there to remind them. And then for the bottom row, the quintessential message, 6, 6, and 9 would be 15. So we have the Devil. And then when we add 8 and 14 and 15, it adds to and reduces to 10, which is the Wheel of Fortune for the overall. I'm going to pause again and shift the cards because they're starting to get too far to the right. So give me a sec. Okay, so where do we start when we have a 9-card spread? Where do we go? Well, most of the time with any spread, I will often start with the card that grabs my attention first. In this case, none of them are really grabbing my attention first. And so in the event of nothing really grabbing my attention immediately, and I don't count these cards because these cards are are ephemeral, right? They're not the spread itself. They're just cards that might help me get greater insight if I need it. They're there to help if I need the help. But these are the primary cards, these 9 cards. So when I don't see anything that grabs me immediately, I'll start in the center. Now remember, the center row was the row designated, what does the mother need to know about her daughter, like what her daughter's experiencing or feeling. Now we do remember that the center card is repeated as the quint. Okay, so let's look at the center card, which is Temperance. Well, temperance by itself, could mean something in moderation, a need to keep a balance between things. Okay, if that's it, then what does she need to keep a balance to, in reference of, right? So we look at the cards that flank Temperance. And we see a king and a queen. They are of the same suit. Now, the background information, the woman is a young married. She's been married a few years, not many. Maybe she needs to keep a balance between her home life, her family life with her husband, and the woman who was her mother, who was her family life, right? The suit of coins is a suit that can represent family life, domestic life. Now, remember, at least the way I read the cards, is that, you answer the question that's being asked. So you interpret the cards in the context of the question being asked. So this is a domestic type of question, right? There was a family dynamic which has been changed, or, there's been something that has, caused it to shift, which is why another reason why I would interpret these two cards as the domestic life. So the woman, in what we need to know about the daughter feels like she's had to put the brakes on, Maybe she's getting pressure from her husband, like, oh, you're talking to your mother too much, or, why are you listening to your mother? I'm telling you this, or I'm suggesting this, or maybe in all fairness to that husband, maybe nothing like that is going on, but maybe it's just something that the young woman feels in her own mind, right? You notice she is glancing in the direction of the king and not in the direction of the mother. So she has a new alliance, right? His influence, perhaps, is the one that she's giving more strength at the moment. And this is, solidified by the idea of the quint, right? The woman is modifying her relationship with her mother. She's putting brakes on, maybe. She's diluting the effects that her mother might have had on her, or the influence that her mother might have had on her. So it seems as though the daughter herself this is what she's going through. She's making adjustments. Now, the bottom row, if you recall, was the row designated to, was there an incident? Was there something that happened? Was there a particular thing that sparked, this response from the daughter? Okay, so we have present here before us a pair of threes. They work together. Remember the suit of coins and the suit of cups being compatible. 3 is a number of growth. The suit of coins, well-being, domestic life, and the suit of cups, emotions, another type of well-being. So there is growth happening, in the family of the woman, and maybe her alliances, are just shifting. The Hermit card, being that it falls under the card which I believe represents the mother, is a card of age. Sometimes number 9 is the end of a cycle. So maybe the new growth is shifting from the influence of the older person, the older woman. The young woman maybe is growing on her own and doesn't need so much the influence or the suggestions, that mothers sometimes make, right? So there's the overall number. Now, these two numbers cumulatively equal 6, which is a beautiful number. It's a number of love, right? So it's not a bad growth. It's a positive growth. It's not that she doesn't love her mother, but she's just growing on her own. And, the influence of her mother isn't as necessary as maybe it once was. There's an end, maybe, Now, these aren't character cards, and they're not looking towards or away. So we have to fill in the gap of what makes sense, right? Now, the quintessential meaning of this row with the 6 and the 9 is 15, the devil. And the devil could be, well, if we look at the devil, what does he mean? Well, usually the devil, to me, I interpret it as meaning, it could be a guilty pleasure. It could be a dependence on something that maybe isn't constructive in your life, if you love chocolate and you tend to be overweight, maybe the chocolate's kind of like the guilty thing in your life that doesn't serve you, but you like, right? Maybe, in some way, the daughter began to feel that dependence on her mother, especially in the context of her being a newly newlywed woman, maybe there was interference or too much dependence on the influence of the mother, right? It's not that the mother per se or that the daughter per se did anything wrong, but that the dependence, on the older person, or the influence of the mother, is just not allowing for the growth she needs as an individual and in unison with her husband. Okay, so what can the mother do? That row, the top row was designated for what can the mother do to help bring better stuff. Well, the moon appears above the king, and the moon can be interpreted as things that go on without your knowledge, things that go on, in the darkness of night, right? In the things that aren't brought out in daylight. So it might be possible that the growth, which is part of, having a husband in your life, there's things that the mother's just not privileged to know. There's a dynamic between them, and I do read the cards in vertical, as well as horizontal, to get insight into, where, how this card might be, be played out. There are things that, of course, go on between any married couple, that the mother wouldn't be privileged to know. So she has to honor that. She has to understand that. The next card, is the Star card. It's a card of hope. It's a card of inspiration. So, Mom, don't be upset. It's just a natural consequence of, the daughter's condition. She's a new married. She's got a new life. She's got a new dynamic, and she's adjusting. Now, I wouldn't interpret the Star card as a card of adjustment necessarily, but I would say that it's a hopeful card, and it's a card of, don't lose faith, for sure. Whatever dynamic is happening between them is between them. And ultimately, things will work out. Just don't lose faith, don't lose hope. It ends with, again, a king, which could be, again, the husband. It could be another aspect of the husband appearing, as it does appear above the mother and not the daughter. It could even represent the girl's own father, influence from there. But in relation to the what can the mother do? Let me get these cards. Give me a sec. Here, that's better. So, what can the mother do to improve things? Well, we have an understanding that there are things that happen, the dynamic with the couple that is just the mother's not privileged to know. She shouldn't lose faith. And that the gentleman, there's another appearance of the gentleman who comes from a place of love. It could be maybe the girl's father. Maybe she's, maybe the mother can, if she wants, can just, ask the natural father, like, have you noticed anything? Or, that kind of thing. You don't have to engage in conversation. Or maybe, if it represents another aspect of the husband, the younger woman's husband, maybe the mother can appeal to him, or can just, work on being on his good side. Not that there's any bad blood between them, but, just to reach out to him in subtle ways, maybe not having a conversation, but, where she's actually broaching the subject, but just letting him know that she feels love for him as well. And not, that her love for her daughter is not at his exclusion. So to include him. The quintessential message of this was justice, which could further indicate just treating the couple with fairness, right? Just, giving them their space, understanding that they have their own private stuff, understand that it's not about you, it's about them, and don't lose faith. Maybe, and I would interpret this then as another aspect of the husband and not the natural father or anything, but just appeal to the husband, remember him, send him a card on his birthday and Father's Day or whatever is appropriate, right? And just treat them as a unit, in fairness. Now, I also will do a quintessential message for all the cards, which in essence is adding 8 and 14 and 15. And we get the Wheel of Fortune, which in the context of the question is just let it go, like ride it. I mean, life is ebb and flow, right? Sometimes, you're more prominent in someone's life. Sometimes you're less prominent, and sometimes you don't figure in at all. And, you just go with the flow of life and to just let them progress naturally, be present for them if they need your presence, and not to lose any sleep over this, Mom. Everything's going to be okay. Everything is okay. It's just a natural consequence of life. So, I hope this has been helpful to you in understanding, one way of reading a 9-card spread using a pip style deck. It's not the only way. It's not necessarily the best way. But after many years, I started reading in 1975 or 76. So I guess, it's a pretty long time, and this is what experience has taught me that works for me. And I hope it works for you too. Until next time, friends, peace and stay well.